A new poll of millennials just out this morning shows America's youngest voters have an unfavorable view of the president and the broader Republican Party. The new poll from NBC News and Gen Forward at the University of Chicago shows 64% of millennials disapprove of the president's job in office. 21% approve. He does best among white Americans age 18 to 34, but even among them, his support tops out at 30%. When it comes to parties, millennials are split on Democrats. 43% have a favorable view of the party, while 42% have an unfavorable opinion on the Republican Party. Nearly 60% disapprove of the GOP, 26% approve. And while Democrats do extremely well among African Americans, Asian Americans, and Latinos, they are upside down among white millennials. 55% of them say that the Democratic Party does not care about people like them. That's fascinating. Let's bring in columnist at the Washington Examiner, Kristen Soltis Anderson, and New York Times reporter, Yamiche Alcindor. Good to have you on board. Kristen, let's go right to the last number that we talked about there, white millennial Democrats. What does it say? What does it say, especially given the election we just experienced?
Well, look, bad numbers for both political parties, but especially the Republicans. These are not surprising numbers. But what they really underscore is that a lot of the challenge that's facing the political parties is not just about age, but it's also about race. It's about the growing diversity of the millennial generation. The fact that white millennials sort of view the Republican Party and Democratic Party as having the same level of they care about me, that's probably shocking to some Democrats to hear that, who would assume that millennials, white and millennials from communities of color, have gravitated toward the Democratic Party. But these numbers are sort of bleak all around and just show that this is a generation that looks at politics and thinks this is disgusting and they want nothing to do with it, and I frankly don't blame them.
Well, Kristen, you've been warning Republicans for some time about losing the millennial vote. Well, the better way to put it is 3 out of 4 millennials do not associate with the Republican Party.
That's right. I mean, in a way, it's been almost 10 years that I've been warning people about this. You all have been so kind as to let me on your show to talk about this time and again. And it just seems like Republicans are so satisfied with the fact that, hey, they won the White House. They ran up the numbers in some places with older voters. And that's been a strategy that at least short to medium term has worked for them. And so nobody's thinking long term and realizes that they are losing. This isn't just about, by the way, the youngest voters, kids on college campuses. These are people in their 30s. Republicans' trend line among 30-year-old, 30 to 39 voters has gone down for the last decade and a half. So we're not just losing the youngest. This is a much bigger problem that is going to bite us long term.
You're talking about, losing an entire generation. Yamiche, if they will put up the backgrounds, the demographics backgrounds. Yamiche, obviously Republicans for 30 years have been getting 8% of the vote among African Americans and underperforming among Hispanics. The real canary in the coal mine here are Asian Americans who used to vote Republican before, and you didn't have to go back many elections where that number was more of a split number. It now seems that Donald Trump's strategy, the Republican Party's strategy of being us against the, quote, others, is having horrific consequences across the board when you have a demographic group like Asian Americans that used to be loyal to Republicans now breaking away fast. 78% disapprove of Republicans and Trump.
I think what this survey shows is that in some ways the Republican Party is really in a catch-22. You had this autopsy that was famous after they lost when Mitt Romney lost, where they essentially said we have to diversify our base, we have to do better, we have to go out and look for people and explain to them that the Republican Party is not just for white people, but it's for all people. And they had all these programs and they have all this outreach. The issue is, of course, that then you had a candidate like Donald Trump, who completely ignored that autopsy, who completely went for his base, who completely focused in and was talking in terms to almost all white crowds, telling them that he was going to be the one that make America great again, that he was going to be the one who understood their culture, understood their heritage. And now you see that millennials are saying, look, you guys can celebrate Donald Trump all you want. You can have a couple, maybe even one more, two more election cycles, but at some point, millennials are going to be the dominant the dominant population. And when that happens, Republicans are going to be in real trouble. And I think what's interesting here, though, is that when you look at Democrats and you look at the fact that Democrats obviously are saying that they are the counter to Donald Trump, millennials are saying you have to do better than that. You can't just say that you don't like Donald Trump. You have to actually offer something. You actually have to care about us. And right now, as you said, white millennials are saying, even if I don't like Donald Trump, I don't know that the Democratic Party actually cares about me.
Kristen, if you look at these numbers, fully a third, 33% of millennials in this survey say neither party cares about them, neither Democrats nor Republicans, which goes to your argument that they're just frustrated with the whole process and they think it stinks. So as you look out over the horizon, maybe not just next year in the midterms, but over the generations to come, what does that portend for our politics? If there's not as much party ID, if they don't trust political parties, is that a lane for third-party politics? Does it blow up the system down the road?
So I'm always skeptical of the idea of third-party politics, in part because it is just structurally, constitutionally so challenging in our country to see folks getting there. But I definitely can see a way that the parties become radically redefined, that they have to mean different things and stand for different things. I mean, certainly the Republican Party of today stands for very different things than the Republican Party of 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. These parties are always evolving, and what I think you're going to see is millennials sort of disliking both of their options and perhaps trying to remake the parties into something that reflects their views a little more. But that will require those young people to decide to run for office, to try to take on leadership roles within their own parties. And if they are disaffected from those parties, from that political system, do they take that step? Do they put up with the grief that comes with running for office? Do they put in the effort that it takes to try to shape a party? Or do they just throw up their hands and walk away? And I don't think we know the answer to that yet.
Building on Kristen's point, Yamiche, this is Harold Ford. Do you think, looking at last night's result, Roy Moore winning obviously against Luther Strange, can we extrapolate from that, or is it too early to say that Democrats may face a kind of insurgent set of candidates that might appeal to millennials? Because millennials obviously participated in that Republican primary down in Alabama. How should we reconcile or try to digest or understand the Moore win and these numbers here and what that may mean for Democrats next year?
I think when people start actually learning who Roy Moore is, when they start learning what he's saying in 2017 about homosexuality, about where he thinks Barack Obama was born, that in some ways we're going to see millennials who are very much energized by Roy Moore and energized by the idea that they have to go to the polls and put people in office that are going to counter him. And I think that what we're seeing when we think about someone as a reporter who covered Bernie Sanders, we're already seeing candidates that are primarying people and that are already pushing this agenda that is getting more millennials out. In my reporting on Bernie Sanders, his campaign and his advisors did not set out to say, okay, we're going to have a whole bunch of rallies and we're going to have all these young people there. Bernie Sanders told me that these young people just started showing up because they liked his message, and his message was one that was before seen as fringe, before seen as someone who had no realistic, actual ideas that could work. And now you see millennials are saying, we want single-payer health care. We don't want Chuck and Nancy anywhere near the White House. And in that way, it tells me that we already are starting to see candidates that are starting to look at Bernie Sanders and say, we're going to go and do those same messages, and that's going to bring out young people.
All right, Yamiche Alcindor, Kristen Soltis Anderson, thank you so much, both of you. Still ahead, what are the chances that Michael Flynn and Paul Manafort will be indicted as a result of the Russia investigation? A top member of the Senate Judiciary Committee puts it at 99%. That's high.
Pretty good odds.
That means that there's that's a good chance they'll be indicted.
Vegas got
Things are kind of closing in
solid
on the whole Russia thing. That's ahead on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.